Yes, 10 o'clock. Please take the roll, Karen, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. For the Shooting Complex Oversight Task Force on Tuesday, June 25th, Senator Cole,
Present.
Representative Ottman,
Excused.
Mr. Kersey,
Present.
Mr. Davidson,
Present.
Mr. Goldberg, Mr. Glenn,
Present.
Ms. Legursky.
Present.
I'm going to say your name wrong. I always do. Mr. Maestas.
Masters. Close enough though. Present.
Thank you. Ms. Koikalea,
Present.
Mr. Schoon,
Present.
Co-Chairman Hicks,
Present.
Co-Chairman Washut.
Present. And please
Yep.
let the record reflect that all the members were here yesterday as well. And with that brings us to Campbell County. I'll let you have a few opening comments and then we'll offer up some questions from the task force.
Great, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good morning. One quick point of order, sir. We've got a couple folks waiting on the Zoom meeting that said they're not able to get in. No, not yet.
I do not have them in Zoom. If they're attending via YouTube, they will not get in.
Right.
But as soon as I see them, if I see them attend via Zoom, I will go ahead and let them in the room.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, members of the task force. First of all, thanks for swapping the schedule, letting us go first. We're going to hustle back to Gillette this morning. There's a town hall with the governor and Senator Lummis and some others talking about coal, the topic in Campbell County these days. So again, I'm Jim Ford, Campbell County Commissioner.
Chairman, Committee, Matt Olson, Executive Director of Public Works.
Yeah, so just a couple of things, I guess, to reiterate from yesterday, thinking overnight about where we were, what we heard from you. And I think the biggest thing is I think we missed a real opportunity not to brand our presentation about how Wyoming gets the most bang for the buck coming to Campbell County. So maybe too early for jokes this morning, but I hope you see what I did there. Missed opportunity, bang for the buck. We just want to reiterate that we think the strongest part of our proposition has everything to do with our community being willing to contribute the well-suited lands adjacent to the Camplex Multi-Event Center, being able to leverage the tremendous investment, the high-quality facilities that the Camplex offers, and how that can complement an eventual siting of the state shooting complex there near Gillette. The Pronghorn Industrial Park extension of utilities and infrastructure just continues to benefit that value proposition. There already is federal money and state dollars into that Pronghorn Industrial Park project, and would greatly reduce the spending necessary for, I would say, support or ancillary investments into this project. I think what we bring would allow the state dollars in the shooting complex to invest in facilities and assets very specific to the shooting park, not those civil or utility type of costs that may be associated otherwise. We didn't mention one important thing about the Pronghorn Industrial Park, and just want to reiterate that those would offer shovel-ready sites for industries that would also support the mission of the shooting complex for gun manufacturers or other service entities in that space. We have, admittedly limited penetration into that market in our local economy. There's plenty of room to do it, and there could be room for those commercial or industrial facilities immediately adjacent to our proposed location for the shooting complex. One thing we thought about a lot is about the business plan, and I must say respectfully that we can't apologize for not submitting a detailed business plan, because that business plan admittedly would need to be based on what gets built. Supporting something from an O&M perspective depends almost entirely on the design, the construction, the extent of the project. And so without knowing that, we did not speculate on a business plan in detail. We also acknowledge that any plan, any model is better than none. We need to do better on that. And even though we may not have the internal expertise and did not present specific business plans, that does need to be done. Any model is better than none, because then you have something to improve on. We'll improve on that. We know we need to do better engaging fully with the stakeholders in the industry and across the state, the other communities, those in that space. To be successful in that regard, we can't just throw the doors open and say, here's a piece of land, come build it. We know that from this point on, should we be entertained for a site visit, we've got a lot of work to do, and right now to get up to par on those topics. Part of that is the understanding that we had before, but maybe enforced yesterday, listening to the other communities' presentations. It's going to take professional staff specific to those shooting sports industries to be hired to manage that facility. And maybe this is something in the realm of USA Shooting Sports, those types of folks, that staff. We know that we can't run the state shooting complex like the Camplex Multi-Event Center. It's too unique. It's too important to the state's investment. We acknowledge that. I am comfortable saying that without being able to give details on exactly who and how we would do that. I think our community has a long history of building partnerships, making big projects work. And with that in mind, I can be confident in saying that we can build towards doing the right thing the right way. Really do want to compliment the other teams, particularly on the design, the ideas about design of the facility. The tremendous expertise exhibited by the Cody team, particularly in that design and operations side of things, the marketing plans, the governance structure. Those are all, I would say in certain ways, definitely more detailed and potentially superior to what we discussed yesterday. But I also can't help but think that we could take the best of those ideas and layer those on top of the basic proposition that we offer. And what that is a well-suited land position, bought and paid for by our community, the willingness to contribute that in its entirety at our cost to the project. There's plenty of room to expand. I think no matter what the initial build out is, there's lots of running room on those lands that we control today. I think that federal, or I know you guys read proposals that considered federal lands as siting. That probably comes with some difficulties. There are proposals and strong ones that come with state lands as the proposed siting. Or we talk about fee simple lands. And I think the fee privately owned lands would in fact offer a simpler, more straightforward, more sure pathway to quick deployment of the project and surety of completion. Having fewer decision makers being able to offer their decisions, for instance, the Office of State Lands and Investment or Game and Fish or other entities or agencies that may come into play in selection of another site. It may be that the Campbell County proposition could offer a straighter, simpler, more sure pathway to an earlier project completion. Since we saw you last night, we did discuss, we heard often and rightly that we need to think about how the community would offer financial surety or security for the project. There's a lot of unknowns out there. We heard about a business plan yesterday that believes that there's profitability in operations, and that could be. Campbell County is committed. We decided last night we would be willing to dedicate a $3 million maintenance reserve account. That number comes from a 15% factor on a $20 million proposed project, 10 of the state's money, $10 million of our land contributions. To dedicate that $3 million to a maintenance reserve account, we would transfer that money out of existing holdings into a dedicated account for this project. With that in mind, I think that's it. That's all we wanted to revisit. We hope for your favorable consideration. We think that we bring the best overall value proposition in what we proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Mr. Olson, anything to add?
No, sir.
Thank you. Task Force, questions for Campbell County?
Yeah, I don't have a question. More than anything, I just, I want to thank you for the time and the equity that you put into this. It's obvious that this is something that you've rallied not only your commission, the city, the representation you had here yesterday. And I think you've done a fine job in due diligence in what the task force has asked. I know there's a lot of holes within the ask, and you've tried to fill those in as best you could as we're trying to navigate this together. But I commend you greatly for the effort you put forth. It's admirable at best.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The together aspect of Mr. Chairman, doing this together is important. We know what we can offer. We know what we have the ability to provide in terms of support. It has to be together. You guys had a tough job with this too. I know your job is to provide the best recommendation that you can and see what the legislature does from there. But, we would need teamwork to make this go off and to do it right.
Mr. Co-Chair.
This morning, the question I have is so if we go with the proposal you have, you guys provide the land, we provide the 10 million for the construction and the build out. So we have a $10 million investment in a piece of property that we have no ownership whatsoever. And so some of the discussion, I guess, from my standpoint, how does the state then go about protecting our investment? The county could very well just say, we've got some other guy out there that wants to pay $100,000 or lease it for a higher rate. And state, get your buildings off of our property. So how do you intend to address the issue of guaranteeing way out into the future that the county intends to continue to maintain this infrastructure that the state's willing to invest in up there? And so I don't know, we need an answer right now. But if you got some ideas on,
Yeah.
Commissioner Ford.
deed restriction, something to that fact, but it is a big concern.
Yeah.
Then we have no authority to tell you guys as another subdivision of government how you can and can't do with your property. So there's got to be an instrument to protect the state's investment. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Hicks, for the question. And it's maybe the question, right, over the long term. I think I'd just take up your offer on saying you don't need an answer right now, because I don't have an answer right now. Like good fences make good neighbors, good contracts make for good business. We, again, together would need to think about how to do that. And all I can say is that we would be a willing and responsible partner. This is a state shooting complex. It's not Campbell County. We'd need your help and guidance where that's concerned. Mr. Olson had mentioned one example on the way down with our urban systems planning committee. That's it doesn't own or operate lands, but it's a mechanism for a state agency, the DOT in this case, to partner with the city and the county. We think maybe there's some lessons to be learned there. Again, a joint powers board that may have, long-term lease or some sort of ties to the land ownership is something that we have thought about in the few hours since we've seen you last. It's a tough question. I can't give you the right answer right now.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Morning again, Mr. Ford,
Good morning.
or Commissioner Ford. So after, I guess, having a little bit of time and thinking and about your proposal and your presented $10 million of the property buy-in to the project, it doesn't wash. We got an issue here. You then propose that you're going to take some of the gross revenues later on in time with that property. So I guess and then once again, I'm not going to ask for an answer right here, right now, but obviously you turn the $10 million property over to the state, one choice, or you wash the proposed gross profit payback to Campbell County and get rid of that. I mean, I don't quite, that's my stumbling block with your proposal. I just think it's implausible to come and tell me that we're giving you $10 million, but yet, hold on a second. Later on, we're going to try to recoup some of this. I commend you for your out of the box thinking, but I guess I'd like to get an answer on how we can work forward. And I will tell you that I appreciate your proposal and all the work you've done. You've obviously very dedicated and committed to this presentation. I thank you for that. But I just, the property ownership is a really a question I do have, which I look forward to hearing an answer, but appreciate the opportunity to ask you this. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Commissioner Ford,
Yeah.
while you don't have to respond to any of these questions today, the vote will be taken today as to
Right.
who will be the finalists. And so the more information you can share might be to your advantage. So with that, you can respond to Senator Culp's question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that guidance. I'll not speculate about things that I don't know or that I can't back up. To Senator Kolb's question, fair point. I wouldn't expect a proposal like this to pass through scrutiny with no knocks, with no pushback on that. We can take that into consideration and think about that within an overall business plan, overall land ownership structure, and talk about that when you come visit Gillette. I would say that, relative to, securing the state's position, ensuring that the community is motivated to operate and maintain properly and protect the investment of the state. I'd say that goes both ways too. This is the Wyoming State Shooting Complex. There are a few members of the legislature here on this committee, and it's going to have a lot to do with what happens in following years about how is this really a state shooting complex, and what does the state do to continue to support its own investment. I'd be remiss if I didn't express those reservations and concerns from our community standpoint as well.
Mr. Co-Chair.
So when we went through this process, we asked you guys, and I say you guys, being all the project proponents, to say, give us what you guys would suggest as a governance structure. And they varied greatly from you guys as let's say Campbell County's was this, we'll provide the land, but you provide all the management, all the employees, all the costs and everything associated that to propose joint power board, third-party vendor operators and all this stuff. But I think having had an opportunity to discuss this with the task force and stuff at some point in time was all great information, but we've kind of landed on a position of what we think is the appropriate level of governance structure. And it's not yours proposal, but the question I have. And so what we're really looking at is some form of it's going to be a joint powers board of some form or fashion. The bylaws and the rules all have to be crafted.
Sure.
And probably underneath that joint powers board, it's likely that there'll be some contribution for ongoing operation and maintenance of the facility. That's the model that we're looking at. And so it's a little bit different than yours. Now, the state's not going to pick up the ticket on all of this by no means. because of the level of the local economic impact of those communities should offset. And so back through your structures, through your governance structures and your local governments. So the question going forward is we have to know today, is that an acceptable format that you guys would diligently pursue in good faith negotiations with this task force and the state as far as a governance structure?
Commissioner Ford.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, simply yes, to work together with this commission, with whatever state agencies continue to play a role in the state shooting complex. I'll just say simply yes.
And thank you.
Other question, Mr. Messes.
First comment, then a question. First comment, I wanted to congratulate you guys on not only your original proposal, but your presentation yesterday. Like I think we all have things that we pay a little more attention to on each project. And for me, if you heard yesterday, mostly about sites and what's presented there, and your flyovers, your drone footage, actually giving us a little bit visual before the chance to put boots on the ground was very helpful, and gave me a little bit more information to work with. And I guess not a question, but another comment, but on the governance structure, which is the other piece. We appreciate all the homework you guys did for us, all the committees that put them together, because we kind of threw out a broad spectrum of what do you guys think, and then we were able to take those and narrow them down, and I start making some, a little bit of a Frankenstein plan from everybody's hard work. So appreciate the work you've done on that. And I don't blame you for bringing a dream scenario of, we keep the land, you guys do this and send us some money every once in a while. It's not a bad proposal. Probably won't make it through unscathed, but we appreciate the effort.
If you don't ask.
Yeah.
Task force, anything further? Ish? Nope.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And Commissioner Ford, we really appreciate your proposal. And, looking at it through the game and fish lens, we're very much interested on the education side, the continuous and constant from recruiting and retaining, shooting sports and shooters to also, bringing in the fold of the youth and new ones. And so we're very curious in your future, should you move on, plans of what that looks like in terms of education, community, integration of state agency, those kinds of elements. So if you can elaborate now, that'd be fine. If not, I'll take consideration later.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, ma'am, thank you. I must admit that that's something, the education and youth aspect is something that was really brought to our attention from the Wyoming Sportsman's Group. They're all over that topic already with the work that they do. I know that you're familiar with some of their efforts in Northeast Wyoming. We think they're a tremendous partner for this. They've demonstrated that with a signed post-dated check yesterday, which I was really excited about. And we would look towards not only a locally controlled volunteer organization like that, to help spur some of that, but the local schools as well, 4-H, FFA groups, we've spoken to that topic about. I was surprised to learn, I didn't realize that in our area, at least the fastest growing varsity sport in our school district is trap league. Wasn't aware that was even the case. So strong support for that, and the kids are having a lot of fun, and what a great way to maintain that culture. I appreciate your comments. We understand the importance of that. And again, we feel that even from just being able to provide facilities to host the, let's say, classroom bookwork piece of that educational experience, coupled with the, the shooting sports complex, we think we've got the right recipe in Gillette.
Karen, we have Commissioner Shellstad online. Can you bring him in, please?
Mr. Chairman, all he needs to do is turn on his camera and his microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Are you there, Commissioner Shellstad?
I am. Can you hear
Turn on
me?
your camera. I can hear you, can't see you. There you are. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to go back and maybe revisit question from Co-Chair Hicks and Senator Kolb as well. I think what I would propose to my board for land ownership would be to have the Joint Powers Board own the property. I think that's the best way for the state to protect their investment and for the county to protect their investment, and in fact, all stakeholders. So that would be my proposal to my board, and I think we could do that. If we get the site visit, we could have that done by that site visit. So just wanted to offer that.
Thank you very much. We've got about 5 minutes left. Any further questions from the task force? Seeing none, give you an opportunity for some closing comments.
Thanks, for your time. This last year plus has gone very quickly. You've gotten a lot of work done. It's an important topic for the state. I'm excited that our legislature has supported this effort and looking forward to wherever this project lands. The long-term continued support and expanded build of a facility that really is a world-class shooting complex for the state of Wyoming. Glad to be a part of it. Really do hope that it finds its home in Campbell County, and we're here to be a capable and willing partner.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will, Mr. Olson, anything on your part? You've been awfully quiet this morning.
Yeah, Jim's, I drove this morning and Jim took the notes. And so I said, Jim, you just take the lead. So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you for Campbell County's supplemental presentation this morning. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Next up will be Central Wyoming, and we'll start promptly at 10:30 if you want to come to the table and prepare.
No, he's a professional guide. Oh, wow. And so he's got a lot of experience in that aspect.
Thank you.
Thanks. So can we get that?
Karen, can you have the record reflect that Representative Ottman popped in just after we completed the roll?
Yes, sir. I'll make sure that's noted.
So good morning. 10:30 according to the clock in the back of the room, I think. Introduce yourselves and then give us some opening comments. And then there'll be some questions probably from the task force.
Chairman, members of the task force, I am Zelima Lopez, Parks Rec and Public Facilities Director for the City of Casper.
Co-chair committee, my name is Justin Farley. I'm the head of Advanced Casper, the economic development arm for Natrona County. The organization formerly known as Casper Area Economic Development Alliance. So hopefully it's obvious why we changed that name.
I'm Dave North. I'm one of the county commissioners here. I'm also the president of the Platte River Rod and Gun Club. And I've also got another business called DNS Environmental. And that's some of my background.
All right, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you for this opportunity to come back and address members of the task force. We wanted to start with just, some low-hanging fruit in terms of some questions that were asked yesterday and make sure that they were clarified. So one of the questions that was asked was regarding Casper's lodging occupancy rate during the shooting season. That was included in our proposal. Hopefully you had a chance to go back through, but just to put a fine point on it, in April, our our occupancy is about 65% with a average rate of $102. May, 65%, average rate of $107. June, it jumps up to 79% with an average rate of $123. July jumps up to 78 or stays steady at about 78% with an average rate of $115. August, 82% at an average rate of $115, and September, 74% with an average rate of $115. That was 2023 data. Since that time, nearly 500 rooms have and will be added this year in 2024, as well as in 2025. So before we suspect that the shooting complex will open, with 2 more hotel properties in the pipeline beyond that. So I wanted to give you that information. Another question that was asked was, can we provide the data set that was given to the University of Wyoming to inform their economic impact study? Of course, the answer is yes. And in fact, the entirety of the data set was an appendix to that study. The final draft of that study can be provided to the task force so that you can look at those data sets. Essentially, it was the business plan that we developed and included in the proposal as well. So the third question was, how will we address, and I'm paraphrasing, trying to keep it succinct. How will we address future development around the site to ensure that there's an appropriate buffer zone? And how do we guarantee the property will remain a shooting complex into the future? I hope I understood those questions. So we actually believe that the state itself has 2 fairly easy mechanisms to guarantee their investment. The first being it can be state-owned land, which gives you complete control over what's done on the property. If we were to use the state funds to purchase the property, it becomes state property if that is your will, and you control what's on the property from here until your ownership desires expire, right? Another mechanism I would offer is that you make it contingent on the investment that you are going to make, that the property has to be a shooting complex for a stated amount of time or into perpetuity. You have programs that already require that through Land and Water Conservation Fund. We have been the very grateful beneficiary of some of those funds, and it does require that the parks that are funded through that program be dedicated into perpetuity for that purpose. And so I think you have the mechanisms in place to secure your investment and make sure that you feel confident that it will remain as long as you want it to remain that way. With regard to the buffer, there are 3,200 acres of adjacent property to the north that is currently for sale. We're not able to procure the exact cost as of this time of what that property would go for. But it is
Is that property owned by the same property owner that sold the original parcel?
Co-chairman, no, it is not. It is owned, as we understand it, by BB Brooks. And so the property is for sale. If it were desired to have that property for additional buffer land or future expansion, we could certainly look at that as an option. Again, we understood that the desired property allotment was 2,000 acres. That is what we secured for the purpose of our proposal. But we could certainly look at expansion if that is the desire of the task force. So The last question, which gets a little bit more complicated, well, I guess there's two, because there's some economic development issues that we wanted to address, but one of the primary questions as we understood it was related to the subsidy for the complex and how it would be funded beyond the first 5 years. And so I want to make it very clear that the proposal, including the business plan that was written for the proposal, was designed assuming that the state of Wyoming wanted to open the facility as soon as possible first, and that they would have no ongoing obligation to invest either capital or operational expenses beyond the initial $10 million investment. So we built our proposal, again, assuming that the state would have no further investment beyond the initial $10 million. And so it was also built to meet the objectives of hosting large state, regional, and national multidisciplinary shooting events. In addition to a focus on outdoor recreation and firearm education, as well as adding access for Wyoming shooters, which we understood to be the primary objectives of the project.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Lopez, if I can interject, I know we did tell you about the outdoor education activities and firearm training. However, your proposal yesterday, you said that you would utilize the Ford Center, the YO Sports Ranch, and Casper College. I didn't hear any element of education whatsoever in the facility.
Chairman, thank you. So our proposal does include utilizing existing facilities so that we don't have to invest capital in building those facilities on site. Given the close proximity, especially of the Wyoming Center or the Ford Wyoming Center and the YO Sports Ranch, we don't feel like it's necessary. It's a 3-minute drive to get from the site to those locations to do any education in existing facilities. Now, future, if we wanted to build onto the property and go through that expenditure so that it's all on one congruent site, I suppose, we could certainly make that investment. But again, understanding that we wanted to open as quickly as possible and be able to offer as many amenities and you know, programs as possible, this is a way to get it done very quickly, utilize facilities that we have close by that are designed for that purpose, really.
Follow
Follow up to that, Ms. Lopez, but any entity, including this state shooting complex, would still have to pay for the use of those other facilities, correct? For this intent?
Ms. Lopez.
Chairman, the simple answer is not exactly. We own the Ford Wyoming Center. We have rights to use it any way we want at no cost. No cost with a caveat that hard costs may have to be covered, right? So if there are personnel required to set up rooms or do things like that, we would pay for that. If we wanted the activity catered, we would pay for the food, but there's no additional cost on top of that. And so given that it's a city operated facility, we would not incur that cost. Now at the YO Sports Ranch, I can't guarantee that they would give us the use of space at no cost. But they've already been a close partner of the city throughout the entirety of their project. And so I think it is safe to assume that we would get a very discounted rate at the very least.
Please continue.
So again, we built our business plan based on the performance, as we understand it, of large shooting complexes such as Cameo that we believed were the model of what the task force was looking for in a shooting facility in Wyoming. So I want to make it really clear that the amount of subsidy is directly related to the primary objectives of the facility. Directly related to the primary objectives of the facility. So in my day job, I operate a number of rec enterprises, and we support subsidy for very different reasons at those enterprises. So for the purpose of the Ford Wyoming Center, we understand the economic impact that that facility brings to our community. And so we're willing to support that subsidy for that reason. In the case of the recreation center, for instance, we understand that that particular facility improves the quality of life for citizens in our community and makes recreation accessible to all, no matter how much, no matter what their economic status is. So we support the subsidy of that facility for a much different reason. In the case of our aquatics, our pools, we are a community surrounded by water. We have a river that runs through it and we have lakes very close by. And so teaching kids and adults, quite frankly, in our community to swim is really important. So we want to keep the cost of those programs very low. So we choose to subsidize those facilities and for that reason. So depending on what your primary objective is, the subsidies will change. And so if the primary objective is to have a profitable recreation enterprise, I believe we can do that for you. It will just look much different, I think, than what we understood the model to be. But based on that, as I mentioned yesterday, personnel is hands down likely going to be your highest cost in terms of an operating expense every year. And so, again, designed believing that the state of Wyoming would have no direct expenses associated with this facility after the initial investment, we could certainly pivot on that. If we needed to run very lean in terms of operating, and really, so the personnel that was proposed in the proposal was informed by two things. One, staffing at Cameo. We visited quite extensively with their leadership and talked to them about staffing and what it takes to really staff a high caliber facility like that. And two, the experience that we have in operating our own rec enterprises, particularly those that are focused on bringing events to the community. And so we proposed 8 positions. Doesn't mean it has to be 8 positions. That's just what we proposed, given the feedback that we had and the best information that we had at the time. If we could count on state support or other stakeholder support to do some of the administrative and maintenance functions at the facility, we could easily reduce that. And in fact, I modified our business plan to say, okay, what does it look like if we eliminate the membership and volunteer coordinator and found somebody else to handle those responsibilities for us? If we eliminated the marketing and event coordinator and hoped that maybe through our local supporters and maybe state parks, maybe state tourism, we could market the facility. And if we got some assistance with maintenance from the state or otherwise, we could eliminate a maintenance position. And suddenly you're saving $300,000 in annual operating costs, roughly. In addition to that, in discussing with RDG Planning and Design with the consultant that I mentioned yesterday, we understood that most of these complexes, if they are operating well, will recover approximately 60 to 80% of their costs. So they're subsidized 40 to 20%. In our proposal, we proposed a 60% cost recovery at year 5. Assuming that we're stabilized in operations around year 5 or 6, if we increased that recovery to 80%, which I still think is attainable based on the feedback we've gotten from our consultants, that adjusts as well, right? That impacts the subsidy overall. And so with the new model, reducing personnel by 3 and changing our cost recovery to 80%, we're looking at about $315,000 a year in operating subsidy. And hopefully that demonstrates that there's a lot of moving parts and that could be adjusted and reduced in many, many ways. And so to answer the question that is also related to that, which was, how do you fund the subsidy? Again, I think Dr. Devine was pretty clear yesterday that we never designed the proposal with the intention that the state of Wyoming would put up money to fund the subsidy. We see several methods by which we could fund the subsidy in continuing operations beyond the first 5 years, which we did package into the $10 million investment, right? We wanted to make sure that subsidy was covered so that we didn't have to worry about that while we were trying to get a world-class facility up and running. But the opportunities I think we have to fund the subsidy ongoing would be in our proposal. We proposed a 501c3 to help with fundraising. And so We believe that that could be a very successful way to raise funds and help to offset that operating subsidy each year. Particularly with regard to the use of the Ford Wyoming Center, we have 4 nonprofits just off the top of my head that I could mention. Boys and Girls Club of Central Wyoming hosts a breakfast annually at the Ford Wyoming Center. It's very well attended. Olivia Caldwell Foundation does an adult prom every year. They're a nonprofit that has an event at the Ford Wyoming Center each year. Our Community Recreation Foundation has arguably the largest craft fair in Wyoming that is a fundraiser for their nonprofit each year. And the Mercer House hosts Dancing with the Stars at the Ford Wyoming Center every year. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in fundraising for those nonprofits at the Ford Wyoming Center each year. There's no doubt in my mind that a nonprofit for the shooting complex could generate similar sponsorships or fundraising through, especially and enhanced through the use of the Ford Wyoming Center. In addition to that, I think that sponsorships and naming rights are something that have not been talked about a whole lot because I don't have a commitment to give you, but we have demonstrated that it is possible in our community to have multi-million-dollar sponsorships and naming rights secured for our facilities. Hopefully that's evident by the Ford on the event center, also evident by an effort that we're undergoing right now to build a second sheet of ice at our ice arena. And we already have a multi-million-dollar commitment from a foundation in town for naming rights for that facility. So it is definitely an avenue for us. I just can't give you an exact number at this time, because when it comes to sponsors and donors, they want to know, one, what am I buying? What am I getting for my dollars? 2, how much does the overall project cost? And 3, when is it going to be done? And unfortunately, we cannot provide that information to any of our potential sponsors or donors at this time. But absolutely, we believe that we have the support out there and could generate funds through those mechanisms. And then the last one I would say in terms of funding the subsidy would be our stakeholders, namely the Joint Powers Board members that we proposed as part of the governance structure. And whether or not that involves the state is completely up to the legislature, but we thought that it went without saying that the members of the task force, being Natrona County, City of Casper, Visit Casper, Advance Casper, would demonstrate a commitment to support the facility. Apparently, we weren't clear enough. And I think that we can say without question that these agencies, along with others that we have identified as stakeholders, are willing to invest. We don't know how much yet. We don't know what the need will be quite yet, but we are willing to invest in the success long-term of a facility like this in our community. And so hopefully that addresses some of the subsidy concern, some of the how we fund the subsidy concern. And again, I just want to emphasize complete flexibility in a business plan that we proposed, but could be structured any way the state wants it to be structured, whether that means the state takes over operation of the facility once it's constructed, whether that means somebody else operates it privately, whether that means it's operated by a Joint Powers Board. All of those things are possible, and we can help partner with the state to come up with the best possible scenario that makes the most sense for all involved.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. We have about 12 minutes left.
I just would quickly add in the same thread of that, as far as the future of this complex, nothing looks better next to a state-of-the-art sports complex than a state-of-the-art sports complex. So $10 million from the state goes into hundreds of millions of dollars that is going up in the private sector, up in that hill behind the committee here. I think guarantees those relationships and the longevity of that shooting complex. So the buzzwords of the collaboration and hubs, and we have the opportunity to develop that whole area up there as something that'll be best for Wyoming, not best for Casper, not best for Cody, not best for Gillette, but best for Wyoming as a whole.
Thank you. Commissioner North.
There was a question that was brought up yesterday as far as how much the actual pool was up at that location where the water is currently, where Soda Lake is. That area is only about 60 acres. So that's a very small portion out of the 2,200 acres that's available. The area can be redesigned and redeveloped very easily. When you're looking at building a range, there's two main things that you would look for. If you want a good backstop, you either have something with a natural backstop as something like a mountain or large hills around it, or a natural basin. A natural basin works the same way because it contains the noise and it also contains anything that comes out of that. So that's a really valuable asset that you have to look at. That's one of the reasons why this is such a great location. The soil types up there are basically sandy loam and clay. And there's sand down in the southern end of it, but you actually have quite a bit of topography change from the south end to the north end, where you have grass steps that you can develop a lot of different things. There are some natural wetlands on the south end that have the cattails surrounded with them in small ponds. Those would not be incorporated. There's things that you can do according to the EPA where you have a banking system for wetlands. So you create wetlands to replace ones that are there. If you're gonna interrupt them, there's things that we can do on that topography, just like you do on a golf course, where you actually build and utilize the water to your advantage and give you that change in atmosphere and change in topography and what you're looking at. With that, we can also, there's never been anything done with this site in the past. It hasn't ever been farmed. Nothing like that has ever been done. They haven't actually gone out and cultivated the vegetation. That's something that can change. Now, granted, every one of you know that in Wyoming, that doesn't happen overnight. That takes a little bit of time and it takes some planning, but that is an option that is available because the groundwater that's there, you can actually utilize that with solar pumps, different things that you can actually increase the vegetation type to make it a more appealing location. The southern end actually has quite a few cottonwoods, quite a few different trees in that area, and you do have that change in topography. So there are things that you can do, that we can do, to make this something that's more visually appealing. Unfortunately, when you look at a lot, there's two things that people look at. They look at what's there, or they look at what it can be. It takes that vision to look at things and know what can be. We look at this location as what it can be, that it's a benefit and not a detriment, because number one, the price that we're getting for that they've been willing to sell it to us for gives us a lot of options that we can actually look at in the future and change things and make it a better location. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Task force. Commissioner or Mr. Messis.
Just a quick comment. You guys definitely drew the short straw going first yesterday. We all had our caffeine running high and we're able to give you the full on grilling treatment. So, but I want to commend you guys on your presentation yesterday. I felt like you covered a lot of bases, checked a lot of boxes, and I learned a lot of stuff yesterday, even after, I don't know if I read all 281 pages that you guys presented, but close to it. But I did learn a lot more yesterday during your presentation. Appreciate you coming and putting up with our high energy performance in the morning.
Commissioner, was this site all or part of it a brownfield site or some type of contamination? And can you kind of elaborate, and how much alkali, bentonite, and contamination issues are there?
Bentonite, I'm not aware of any bentonite in that area at all. It's clay. It's clay and sand. The southern end of it, where the inlet basin was, that's where contaminants or water from the real old refinery, the Amoco refinery, were pumped up there for many, many years. In 2003, that entire area was cleaned up. That's what the CAMU is. All that, we removed approximately 1 million yards, and that's all sealed. And that is not going to be part of this. That is going to be removed from this site location. So that is not something that's there. It has been cleaned up. And that was basically in the inlet basin. The water BP had an agreement and Amoco had an agreement to maintain that water level out there in the basin. That's where most of that water came from over the years. It wasn't a natural reservoir. It's something that was pumped up there. In the inlet basin, it actually had a location that we filled that up to a certain level. We maintained that level, and then those waters flowed over into the Soda Lake area. And that's where most of that basin came from. So the rest of it is just like a lot of other areas in the state where you have natural basins, but a lot of that was artificially developed.
Questions? So the sandy clay areas fine for building a structure. If we were to build a building out there, that we don't have any concerns about engineering around the soils in order to build a structure or roads, those sorts of things.
I don't have any concerns about it at all. And I've got an extensive history in construction. The actual shell layer is not that deep up there. And that's the reason why you have, even on Stuckenoffs, just to the southwest or southeast of that, you have a lot of groundwater because the shell level is so shallow. So as far as digging down and actually putting something in there to stabilize that, you don't have to worry about that. That is something, there's a lot of techniques out there. And on the very southern end, which is where the building would be, that's actually the best soils.
In the few minutes we have left, your presentation talked about some satellite facilities, a biathlon range, an archery range on the mountain, the Flat River Rod and Gun Club. Can you elaborate on how all of those would fit in under the umbrella of the Wyoming shooting complex?
It makes it really easy because every one of those are owned by the county. Every one of those facilities are currently owned by the county, except for Stuckenoffs, and that's the city. But right now, there's a lot of times where you have overflow or you want people that want a different experience for different things. Every one of those locations has that availability. The biathlon club, we held the national championships there 2 years ago. So that is something that we all have. It's all developed. It's actually designed right now where they can actually do rollerblading up there, roller skating. I can't remember what they call it, but they can shoot. Flat River Rod and Gun Club, we're having the Ultimate Hunter out there. That's something that where you have to have specific type of environment or terrain to utilize that. So it's not going to be against the statewide shooting complex. It's going to be to supplement it so that if there are additional requirements where other groups want to come in, we have that ability. The archery range up on Casper Mountain has two different loops. One of them's 1.3 and the other one's 1.1 mile long, where we have 3D targets already. It's big enough that you can actually accommodate a national shooting event up there because we have the parking and we have other things that are already there. The infrastructure is already there. So these are just to supplement. They're not to take the place. They're to supplement and offer more opportunities in conjunction with what we currently have. If you want to have part of the event, at the statewide shooting complex, but you want to have another portion of it at one of these other locations, we can do that. We can accommodate that, and it's not a problem.
Okay, we have 2 minutes to wrap up. I'll give you a chance to make some closing comments.
Chairman, members of the task force, we just thank you again for your time. We want to express our emphatic enthusiasm for this project, no matter where it ends up. We do believe a vote for Casper is a vote for Wyoming, but we understand that you have a very difficult decision to make and you'll have to weigh the pros and cons of each site accordingly. I guess my closing comment would be related to the wow factor. I know that's come up quite a lot. Certainly it's obvious. We don't have a beautiful, pristine piece of property as maybe offered by another community. But we believe that our wow factor is our community. It's what the area has to offer residents and visitors that come to see us. And so I just want to emphasize one statement that was in the presentation, but really we feel like the value of the location will come primarily from the quality of the facility, a world-class facility that is not offered in many other places, the expert design of the scenarios and the courses for the competitors, which we also believe we can offer, and the facility and community's ability to host these large events. And we know hands down, we can do that better than anyone. We'll boast it all day long. So thank you very much again for your time and your energy in this project. And we look forward to hearing the outcome.
Thank you very
Mi-
much. It's
Mr.
11
Chairman,
o'clock.
may I throw
Unfortunately,
one more?
Commissioner, we're 11 o'clock.
I was just gonna say, if you're worried about building, the Wyoming Contractors Association actually has a building just to the south of that location in the southeast corner on the south side of Amico Road. So
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Central Wyoming. And that takes us to Park County.
Go ahead and get started. So you guys remember the routine from yesterday. State your name and then address the chair, but go ahead if you'd like to provide some opening remarks about your proposal and some of the questions from yesterday. So take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Co-Chairman, rest of the committee. Again, we would like to express our appreciation for being in the hunt, so to speak. We heard yesterday a number of questions that we would like to answer one by one, and then hopefully we'll have some time to address some different ones. So I'm going to start with a question about use of dormitories for college interns. And Danny's going to deal with that question.
Mr. Co-Chair and Task Force, I'm Danny Michael, curator of the Cody Firearms Museum. Yesterday, as James mentioned, there was a question about we propose in our proposal that we could utilize some workforce potentially from Northwest College students. And the question arose about their housing ability during the summer. Could the college be utilized for housing? I didn't want to break protocol and jump out of my seat, but I did know the answer to that one. The museum works with the college now to house some of our interns there. My intern this summer in my department is housed there. And we did reach out to Northwest College to confirm their student housing availability, and they do have availability for Northwest College students during the summer to live in the dorm. So hopefully that's a fairly straightforward answer about housing availability for potentially that source of a workforce for this site. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Co-Chair, members of the commission, question arose yesterday from the good senator from the county where the waters are sweet about the road. And Park County is committed to building a primary road into not primary, it'll be residential construction. There are 5 types of county roads. You have primary, secondary, residential, local access, and recreational. Our engineers believe that the amount of traffic that would be on there daily, a residential type road would be sufficient. It'll be a 60-foot wide easement. There'll be 24 feet of travel, 2 12-foot travel lanes. It will be built with the intention and the ability to bring it up to a paved, chip sealed surface in the future if necessary. We've also committed to maintaining that as a county road year round. That cost right now is estimated at $8,500 a year. Again, their estimates on the cost of this road would be $750,000 to build the road from the highway to the site. And if you have any further questions about that, I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Senator Kolb, any questions on the road?
No.
And sorry, Lee Livingston, Park County Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman and members of the task force, Julie Golub. There was a specific question about the Starlink internet. We have some data for you. It has 40 to 220 megabytes per second. And to give you kind of a little bit of information, the most demanding live streaming service is YouTube, and it requires 3,000 to 8,000 kilobytes of upload speeds. And Starlink actually guarantees 5 to 20 megabytes. So it's plenty enough to do live streaming services. But to a point with the electronic scoring, the specific company that has built that is called Practice Score, and they've designed it specifically for ranges that don't have Wi-Fi. So it's an airdrop situation. So with our investment of going with Starlink and upgrading to the necessary routers that would be needed for the facility, it wouldn't be a problem at all.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions on the Starlink question, I'd talk a little bit about a great question that was posed by the co-chairman yesterday, related to how do we engage the entire state in this process? And I have to admit that in the course of building this, we've been so focused on site, we've been so focused on the business plan. We didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the big picture, and it caused us to really reflect on that. And so as a resident of Evanston, why does this matter if we put it in Cody, Gillette, or Casper? What does it mean to me? And so some of the things that we have, and these are just general thoughts that we think through our state advisory committee, we can bring them to reality, is that we think that every resident of the state of Wyoming should have the opportunity to use this state recreation area the same as they use the other state recreations areas. And so people who would use the facility with a state park pass, for instance, we're probably going to get a discounted rate for doing so. And in addition, as an introductory offer, we could give a first-time users pass to anyone with a Wyoming driver's license in exchange for their contact information, so we can first build a database of who's used it at least once, but also to give us an opportunity to reach out and provide information to them. We also think that other shooting ranges in the state, other shooting associations, hunting groups, could apply for a kind of a reciprocity agreement between the entities, so that if you're part of the Wyoming Sportsman's Group, you show your membership card at the gate and you get a discount for a day use on that facility. And so that gives the people of Wyoming who have invested in this project an opportunity to be a part of the project and receive the benefits of it as well. We have another concept that we really like and we're really excited about. I'm going to have Julie talk about it. And it's a thing called dual matches.
So this is nothing new. We do this quite a bit actually in Missouri. Instead of trying to get people to come to the state multiple times during the year, we host what we call back-to-back matches. These can occur during the weekend, or they can occur on 2 weeks out of the year. And for example, in Kansas City, we host a major tournament, and our sister city in Columbia, 115 miles away, hosts one as well. One on Saturday, one on Sunday. In Wyoming, we have the Rolling State Steel Championship, outstanding tournament. People come into town, shoot that on the weekend, spend a few days training at the state shooting complex, visiting Wyoming, and shooting another tournament, the Buffalo Bill State Steel Challenge. We can do the same thing with Gillette's military competitions, Casper's USPSA presence. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can get people to come, because shooters love to shoot. And the more opportunity you give them to shoot and spend money in the community, they're going to prioritize those events, even over prestigious national championships. And the benefit here is piggybacking off of what's already established in Wyoming gives you the chance to make this state shooting complex recognized to get those national level events faster. That makes sense.
Thank you, Julie. One other opportunity we think is out there, and I think it's a definite goal of the committee, is to attract companies to Wyoming to take a look at our state as a place to do business that's firearms friendly. And we have mentioned, and others have mentioned, the Shooting Industry Masters event that has been held in Wyoming and held in Cody in 2014, where they actually bring companies from around the country. In fact, almost every company in the country was represented at that particular event. We thought it would be interesting to bring the Wyoming manufacturers of outdoor products, firearms in particular, to an event that would be much like the Shooting Industry Masters, and then invite other companies from the outside to come in and share a weekend networking and understanding what it is that Wyoming has to offer. What is the allure of our state to outdoor products manufacturers? And we think that that state complex could host that in addition to doing some events like an outdoor showcase or a roundtable where companies could come in and talk about new products, they could disclose new products, they could test new products and utilize it as a space to encourage more manufacturing into the state. We also believe that the state shooting complex could be kind of the center fire point for education opportunities. You've talked with other groups about that. Commissioner Livingston talked about yesterday some opportunities we think are present for the use of education. We think through that state advisory task force that we would be able to build opportunities to do more educational program with Game and Fish, with things like 4-H, Boy Scouts, and other organizations that are doing things. Certainly have a lot to learn there. We certainly don't have all the answers on that. The other part of it is that we have included in our budget a plan to participate in shooting trade shows and shooting and hunting trade shows around the country, whether it's the ATA or the SHOT Show, Safari Club International, either at Dallas or the one in Reno. We would participate in those, and we would offer the opportunity for other Wyoming ranges to promote their programs and their complexes at the same time. It's our intent to hold a booth at the show, probably in conjunction with the Center of the West. That would be our likely plan. That would give us the opportunity to let the people in the other parts of the state, let that be known that they're out there as well. I think finally, what we would talk about is the ability for that state advisory board to really rally people around legislation that supports firearms, Second Amendment type activities, outdoor education, conservation education, any legislation that's happening on a local or on a statewide basis. We'd have to have a close tie with NSFF and Nephi Cole and his role as government affairs with the Shooting Sports Foundation. So that's what we're thinking we'd do as far as the state engagement. So with that, I guess I do need to talk a little bit about water.
Let me ask a question.
Handed
real
my
quick,
notes away.
Mr. Klessens.
Sir.
This event center that you're visualizing. Sometimes when we think about building structures that are merely functional, right? Sheet metal barn type building or something more beautiful, looks more like a hunting lodge and so forth. Which are you envisioning in your budget? Are you envisioning putting limited amounts of money in just having some square footage, or are you looking at seeking donors and funding to build a venue that might be more attractive for other operations?
That delves a little more into design than we went. We used a core budget of $300 a square foot for the facility. And obviously, because of an estimated 16,000 square feet, we're going to need some kind of a large envelope, probably a metal structure. The building 160 by 100 feet to accommodate the indoor shooting range for archery and air rifle is where that came from. But we certainly see that the need to have the entry be a wow as well. There was a wow as you entered our site yesterday. You saw that on the video. We want people to turn that corner and the complex be there, and it'll be a wow too. So that will probably use some native rock, that will probably use some timber, things like that.
Any questions so far? Mr. Schoen?
Mr. Co-Chairman, thank you. Question, you have $3.2 million that we talked about yesterday from the Business Council. If that doesn't go through, and you also are implying that you're going to be in the black on this, what happens if you're in the red? Is this subsidies? Like how do you perceive this happening going forward if you don't get the 3.2 million and if you're in the red?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Schoen, on the slide that indicated our sources and uses for capital, we did include the Business Council for an infrastructure grant, roughly $3.3 million to close the gap on a budget that was built in a very, I guess, let's say it was built conservatively. My friend, Mr. Ross, doesn't let me use the word liberal. We tried our best to pin down what the cost would be, but not knowing exactly what we were building, that was a challenge for sure. But I think as you saw in the last pages of the business plan, We did try to identify every single thing we would build down to the linear feet of 12-foot road and the linear feet of 24-foot road and cost estimates that way. We believe that it is a qualified opportunity with the Business Council, but as with most grant opportunities, nothing's certain. But what we would do is either do a value engineering and try to bring the project cost down, cover it through some of the local fundraising that Mr. Ross talked about yesterday. You know, there is the opportunity of doing local initiatives, you know, to actually do a capital campaign just to finish construction. So that's what we would anticipate.
And I guess just to add to that, we're going to get there together. We're going to get it done. And our goal is to have the 8 shooting disciplines that you desire. Now, that's our best proposal. It's a more shared investment from the state. We think there's a lot of state support for this. And we think if we can bring an appropriate application through the Wyoming Business Council, that's a great first avenue. But we will have other options, either additional fundraising, value engineering. Maybe there's some disciplines that we come to agreement that the task force says you don't have to have it at year 1 because you had 4 priorities. We really want to get it done though. We want world class to be the mantra, not 2040 or 2050. That's not our goal. That's not our vision. I don't believe it's your vision. We want the mantra to be world class 2027, 2028, whatever you want, but sooner rather than later. And we'll get it done. We'll get there. We'll bring in partnerships, either community or state or both. So we'll figure out how to work that.
Seeing no further questions, please continue.
Okay, I would like to, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Schoon, I would like to add one additional thought. One of the sage pieces of advice that I gained from Travis Gibson from MGM Targets, who worked with us on our preliminary plan, our conceptual drawing, he also worked extensively with the development of Cameo. And also heard from Walter Pruill, who was the director of Cameo, and I know you all know him well. Is they indicated that there's a real need to be practical and pragmatic about how you construct a facility. Most of the things that you see on the site of Cameo were actually self-performed by the crew that's on site. Walt and his team, a guy named Barry, I think was pretty magical in that regard. And I think that's one of the things we ought to take a real hard look at is how do we, not just because we don't want to lose any of the disciplines. We really don't want to open with no trap ranges, for example. That's your number 8, you know. We want to begin with the whole thing fully operational. So we're going to work with your design group to the best we can to make this very practical and push that budget as far as we can possibly push it.
There was a second, Mr. Chairman, there was a second question, I think, that we kind of skipped over. Deficit. What if there's a deficit? You know, we have a margin of 150,000 in our budget. We think it's believable. We think it's vetted. We think Cody offers some opportunities that may be more challenging in the rest of the state with the amount of traffic that goes through to Yellowstone Park and the Buffalo Bill Center of the West and the partnerships we envision there and what we've already got going on in the community. So we don't anticipate, it's not our anticipation we're going to be running in the deficit, but part of our plan was, you know, best laid plans of mice and men. It seems to happen a lot, right? Things don't go as planned. So that's why we are offering and proposing to raise 300,000 in cash, starting cash that we bring to the table as a community, 450,000 in reserves that we bring for operating reserves, and then a maintenance and reserve of 1,115,000. And we don't like the plan without those things. So those aren't things we're going to cut back on. We think we have to bring those reserves to the table because it could very well end up, as the question challenged, you know, to take a couple of years to really hit the groove and do the right things and get the revenue streams in place. So hopefully we answered both of those questions. Mr. Chairman.
Follow-up question for you. Are you putting forth that $1 million as the maintenance? Is that in your plan?
Yes, it was in there was really, we had the budget, which you were handed yesterday, the 3-year cash flow operating budget. And then we have a capital plan, how we spend the 10 million and other resources we bring to the table to get the 8 shooting disciplines event center and the whole thing completed by opening. And then we had a plan that we formed as a community and using shooting industry and our experts at other fundraising in our community that's been successful in the past of how we raise that revenue in 1,865,000, including the 1,115,000. So that's shown in the very back of the RFP. Appendix 16 has the fundraising plan, but all of those budgets are in the very back in what you were handed yesterday, the materials. Mr. Chairman, did that answer the question? Okay.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Mr. Mestis.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Park County Group, I don't know if you were here early enough to hear some of my comments to Campbell. But going back to the governance structure, some of the conversations there were, we threw out tell us what your dream scenario is, and then we allowed the communities to all kind of come back to us with their homework and their dream scenario or what they thought might work. But during that course of time, we've also learned a lot about this one sounds okay, this one doesn't. And I think we've come up with some guardrails on our sides that we're starting to put together. You guys definitely had the most comprehensive program plan pretty much throughout the board, but that makes me wonder how flexible you guys are. Is it this way or we're out, or do you guys have some, before we get to the next stage, the state's going to put in a lot of money into a community and the state has to protect their interests as well. So we wondered what the flexibility of your groups was for the governance.
Mr. Klessens.
Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Maestas. We asked a question to this extent at the Cody meeting about guidance. We wanted a little more firm input as to what you expected from us, and we were told to make a proposal of how we best saw it. And we said we'll do that, but we will do that with the caveat that we're offering you what we think is best, but we will certainly listen to any advice of the task force or an advisory board in shaping this in the best possible way.
And just to be, Mr. Chairman, could I try to follow on that same? We're flexible. Just want to get that out there. Yes, we are flexible and we plan and envision working together to build a better vision for this. And we don't have all the ideas. We're listening, we're learning, and we want this to be a joint effort. So we end up with the goal, world-class shooting facility. So yes, flexible.
So we've got about 8 minutes left. We'll go Senator Kolb and then down to Mr. Kersey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Just getting back to this, and I don't want to belabor this question, but you're short funding. If you don't get that grant money, you're short. So my question, I guess, to you is, how will you make that up? And what I heard is that we're just going to cut a bunch of things out and we're going to do a lesser project. Now, I don't care personally how you do it. You know your area better, you know your people better. But I guess I want to hear your answer about, will you make this up and be able to come whole when it comes to the original proposal or not? That's what my question is. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Klessens or Mr. Ross, for sure.
Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Senator Kolb. The answer is that, can we make it whole? Yes. One of the reasons that we did a detailed budget is because we wanted to look at items 1 through 8. And then one of the questions we'll pose to the task force, if the budget comes out in excess of what we have capital available, we'll say, which of the pieces do you want to prioritize? You've already told us 1 through 8. We could simply take out the indoor shooting range. That's 12,000 square feet out of 16,000. And quick math tells me that's about 3.6 million that we could carve from the budget immediately. We could take out number 8, which is the trap shooting, skeet shooting. Just the equipment cost of that alone is $1.2 million. So we can bring our budget down very quickly, by carving those off and then going out and fundraising at a later time, to put those in place.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Could I add to that?
Yeah,
Chairman?
well, could I respond to that first?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, if
Yes.
I could, thank you. That's not what I hope for. No, not cutting it out and coming back, 10 years later. My question is I, as a member, expect this project to look like this, right? And your proposal is missing money because of the believed inability of getting that grant. So how are you going to overcome that? Thank you.
My answer is different, Mr. Chairman. My answer is different. And it goes back to how I tried to express earlier. We are going to have plan A, B, and C of how to get there. And last on the list is D, cutting, with agreed upon. And I don't believe any community brought forth a plan that tried to labor and work at and put together a plan that had the business plan vetted as well as we did. And I'm sorry if this comes across as overconfidence, but I think we brought that forth. We brought the site forth, and we brought the idea of reserves going into this. And we brought the idea, we tried to bring the idea of completing this in the way you envision it, all 8 disciplines, just like you said. So I think that is our goal. And we're going to get there in multiple ways before we throw in the towel and say, which disciplines would you like to cut first? Although that option was clearly given through your RFP, and I don't know that all communities have been able to bring this aggressive of a plan through and forward to open all venues. And the Wyoming Business Council may not be the answer. That may be a longer shot than we envisioned, but we do think we can raise the monies as a community and have other plans and value engineer and without going to the drastic steps of cutting venues.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Corsi.
Yeah, I think you just answered what I wanted to ask, because I'm with Senator Kolb on that. I don't think that this task force is looking at something that is going to be done in phases. And to hear what you've just said, I think that's the commitment, and Commissioner Livingston, I guess I would like to hear your word of flexibility as well. Well, my word of flexibility is, again, we're going to work with the task force. We were given an RFP, said, how do you think this will work? We brought forward how we think it would work. But again, this is the first shooting complex I've dove into. So I'm very flexible, and I will stand behind everything I say for as long as I'm in office. What was that, 18 meetings? 18 meetings. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm curious, I didn't freshen up on the actual budgeting. What was the amount of dollars that are anticipated to be spent in infrastructure to prepare for constructing the facility? In other words, how much of that $10 million is planned to be spent on complex rather than access and utilities?
We have about 2 minutes.
It is roughly $2.8 million, Mr. Davison, Mr. Chairman.
Anything further, task force? Want to give us some final comments in the 1.5 minutes left?
Yes, please. You can cut me off, which people do all the time. So just touching on what's been raised earlier, Mr. Chairman, we think the advisory board is really critical and important. We came up with that idea kind of late in the game, and it's something we value. This has to be a state shooting complex we're all proud of. Every resident of Wyoming, they're all in the game. And we don't want to minimize the fact that we are looking for huge state participation, not just from a checkbook, but from expertise, knowledge, goals, vision, and helping us get this done and to take it into the future. So that advisory board is, I think, very powerful to connect all of our Wyoming communities and bring it together. James described that earlier, but that doesn't give us, we don't have all the answers. We probably have quite a few wrong answers that you heard from us today, but we know the mechanism of that statewide advisory board gets us to the right answers. It's the right mechanism to get there and to keep getting there together. So that is a commit, we're committed to that. And we're gonna be learning into the future on that to get this to be we want it to be world-class in our, before I pass, I'd like to get this completed and see it be world-class in the next few years. So that's our main goal. Our business plan, again, sustainable cash flows, provides for reserves, anticipates the unforeseen, brings 3 million in community support, which I'm hearing may need to be higher. And we've done that before as a community, and we want to achieve all 8 shooting disciplines. That's our desire. We don't have another plan.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. 11:30. Thank
Yes,
you very
sorry.
much. Cutting people off is what I do.
Yeah, you did it very well.
I can attest to that.
So task force, thank you for
you.
your presentation. All of you who presented this morning, thank you. I think it's very helpful. Give everybody a second bite at the apple to explain where we're at and help us comprehend how you see the world as we move forward. Mr. Co-Chairman, how do you want to proceed?
Could we take a?
Can we talk 3?
Up here.
Can we talk 3 minutes?
3.
You said 5, I said 3. You want to meet in the middle?
4.
We'll stand at ease.
Whoops. Task force, we've had 2 days to sit through presentations and just absolutely excellent on every level. Now we have the duty and the responsibility to make tough choices. And we've done this before when we've looked at these proposals and stuff. And so what I'm going to do is we'll just go down the list and we're going to ask each member of the task force to provide 2 recommendations to move forward. It's not a ranking at this point in time. It's just a recommendation. If the members of the task force feel compelled to explain their decisions or not, that's clearly up to your choice. If you want to say, this is why I feel, and this is why this one didn't make the move forward, this is an opportunity to do that, to explain why you're doing it. If you don't want to explain your vote, that's perfectly okay too. And so going forward, what we'll do is we're going to narrow this down to 2 entities right now. We've already got a couple of days scheduled, not that far out, to do the site visits, and then another meeting to make a final decision by the 22nd of July. So this is going to happen pretty fast. But with that, any questions, members, as to what we're going to do now? All right, just because I want to start down with my good friend Cade down there as the first gunner here, but go ahead, Cade, if you would, Karen, and can you record these, please?
Absolutely. I'll make sure they're in the minutes.
All right, so with that, Cade, do you want to lead us off?
You bet. For me, there were 3 great presentations. They all had high points and they all had holes in them. And at the end of the day, I'm voting for dirt. I'm voting for the site. And with that, I believe Campbell and Park move forward.
Yeah, I would move Campbell and Park County forward.
On behalf of the Game and Fish Department, the whole focus for us is always, as I've said, been education in this and really being a nexus to partnerships in the future. And so looking through that lens and then also the site, we are very much voting for Park County and Campbell to move forward as well.
I've got complete confidence that Campbell County or Park County can move forward with this, and I look forward to seeing the sites.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I'm in favor of Campbell County and Park County. I'd like to take a brief explanation. And I'd like to say if I could combine these 2 and make one, it'd be the best possible facility I could have thought of. However, the strengths of one is the downfall of the other. And I look forward to how we're going to talk about that and come forward with a proposal that suits the state the best. But I think the remoteness of, you can't beat the wow factor with Park County, but you can't beat the commitment, frankly, that I'm hearing from Campbell County. And just to say it like that, I think I'll leave it there and look forward to finding out more. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I'm going to rely a little bit on some of my own local knowledge about the piece of land out north of our city that's being proposed for this range. And so I'm going to vote for Park County and Central Wyoming. I think when you think about the Central Wyoming proposal, what I think many on the task force have not fully embraced is the potential of what it can be. That site has some potential. It's not Cameo, you know, it doesn't have any waterfalls or mountain climbing available, but it's got real potential. And if you think about Cameo, the vast majority of that facility is flat ground. It's got some really neat aspects that allow some other things to happen, but the vast majority of that facility is flat ground. So my vote goes for Central Wyoming and Park County.
I keep learning these legislative committee meeting lessons. Yeah, to kind of echo some of the statements, especially our private industry, one of the private industry representatives on the end, you know, I kind of vote soil too. I think in summary, you can get people once, but you want them to keep coming back. And that leads to economic development of different sorts. So alphabetically, Campbell County and Park County.
Thank you. James.
Mr. Co-Chairman, I'd like to go on the record and say thank you to all 9 of the communities that put in the bids. I mean, everyone went above and beyond. The 3 that were here, incredible. We could go with any of these and they would be amazing sites. My choices on this one are going to be Campbell County and also Cody, Park County. Again, I'll mirror what these guys have said, but we're going to go with the site. I think that there's some opportunities there that have been fantastic and they've been presented in a nice way. So those are my choices. Thank you.
Director Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the central location of Casper. I can't get over the flatness. I just think we need a wow factor. I'm going to shoot for Park and Campbell.
Thank you. I also want to say that all 9 were so impressive. I mean, the due diligence and the work behind each and every one was incredible. And from all locations all over the state, expertise from so many different backgrounds. And I would say that my choices, it's not been easy, but I'm going to choose for Central Wyoming and Campbell County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to second Representative Ottman's support of all the people that submitted proposals. And I hope that this advisory committee thing sticks and we, maybe start looking at some of these different groups or some of these people that submitted and have interest in this. It might be a great place to start for, finding interested and capable parties to advise that future growth. I'm very happy that our hometown Park County crowd did a great job and provide me some good cover to advance them to the final spot, as well as very interested in that Campbell County community and all the extra stuff that would be attached to and associated with a Wyoming State Shooting Complex there.
The tiebreaker. So I can't, I'll just reiterate what everybody else said. This has just been a great opportunity to try to do something good for the state. And I really appreciated everybody. I mean, there's literally statewide been thousands and thousands of hours put into this. And I hope nobody feels like they're still not part of this process. But with that, I'm going to go for Park and Central. That's my 2. And so, according to my tally, Campbell and Park had the same number of votes to move forward, and Central was 3rd. So pursuant to the discussions we have, those 2 proposals will move forward with site visits. We've scheduled right now the 15th and the 16th, with the 17th as an alternative day. I would propose that we do Park County on Monday, the 15th. And we'll try to get that organized and set up. So one of the things that I think we need to have a little bit of discussion is, you know, we talked about doing these back to back. I think that may be a little bit of premature on our part from the standpoint, we haven't had a chance to visit with those folks to how long they think it's going to take to do an adequate job to go out and review those sites. And so what I don't want to do now is short the two finalists and say, you know, you got 3 hours, get us out there, get us back. We've got it, because there's got to be some other discussions about governance structure. There's going to be about contributions and management, you know, joint powers board, conceptual. So there'll be some of that's going to be in class or in meeting type format. Some of it's on the ground. And so just my thoughts, committee, that we may actually want to leave a full day in between those two site visits and shoot for Monday, Wednesday. We've already got that. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Co-Chair, I second that. I'd like the opportunity to spend the evening in each community, not feel like we have to get on the road. They're not directly adjacent. So unless you've sequestered the plane somehow, I think having a day to get through some of the beautiful parts of Wyoming would be advisable.
So any other discussion on that item? Any recommendations? If there is no recommendations, what we'll do is we'll schedule the second site visit in Campbell County on Wednesday, the 17th. That work for everybody? Get those dates down. So we'll be doing first in Park County on the 15th, Wednesday, the 17th in Campbell County. And then we will get back together on the next Monday on the 22nd and make a final decision. So any questions, anything good for the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to throw out too, I think, to the two finalists, and that is to sharpen pencils. I think there's still some negotiations that need to happen. And I think there's more pencil sharpening that needs to happen. And I think planning for the tour is good, but I think we're going to need a half a day or a quarter day with each of these groups sitting down somewhere and talking governance, talking budget, and talking through those things. And I wanted to throw that out, see if that's kind of what you were thinking, sir.
Yeah, and I think that detail is very important, because I do agree, you know, based on what we've seen and the difference in the proposals, and I guess the task force is now starting to coalesce after having the opportunity to review all of these, discuss the pros and cons with the proponents, but also the members of the task force. I think we have a lot clearer vision of where we think this thing needs to go. I mean, we ultimately will make that recommendation. So I do agree with that I think this is going to take anywhere for 2 to 3 hours minimum in a sit-down discussion with each one of these final proponents to hash out some of the more detailed stuff that has to be, the decision has to be made before we make the final decision as to where it goes. And so keep working on that. That's the message out to the two recipients, so that we're moving forward with the site visits. Those will be, we'll work with each one of the recipients to try to get a schedule together. Build in enough flexibility, because these are outside tours that we may be able to do half a day in the morning, half a day outside. But what I really need to get back from you guys, Campbell County's not here, but I'm sure they're listening, is to start to figure out how you want to show your site, how long you think that's going to take to do that, what the logistics are for you to get 12 people here. I would like to have our staff come along, because there may be questions that we need to get recorded and information for the public record. So it would be 2 staff members from the LSO plus 12 members of the task force. So you got to move 14 people plus whoever you're presenting around your sites, figure out the logistics that it takes to get that done. And then just plan on a number of hours. I would say a minimum of 2 to 3 in a meeting setting. We're going to leave that up to each one of you 2 finalists to find a place that you can sit down with the task force, get a meeting locations, and we're going to put the onus of the responsibility of organizing that day around your schedule and what you think is most appropriate timing, whether it's afternoon out on the site, morning in there, morning on the site, and afternoon in the meeting. So we'll leave that up to you, but the quicker you can get that scheduled back to Karen and LSO and we can get that distributed to the task force, the better. But if there's no other comments, Cade?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to leave some flexibility on that July 22nd. Our official date for the notification of the winner, so to speak, is August 13th. And I think we can, on that July 22nd, get together as a group and identify the front runner. But I would like to have that additional 3 weeks of negotiation time so we can go back and see if the front runner gets eliminated if they're not flexible in some of the things we've discussed.
And I think that's a good recommendation. That 22nd, we're going to get down and sit down and see if we can narrow it down to one, but we may not be able to because there's still unresolved issues that may need. So I think, again, that's probably pretty good advice. Kay, we'll use that as that day, as we'll have an online discussion based on all of the site visits and a follow-up and see if we feel comfortable selecting a final proposal or whether we need to do more negotiation. So that is stated in the RSP. I think it was August 13. But we will be meeting that day to make those discussions and see if we need additional time. So Senator Colby, you have something?
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair. Just to reiterate to finalists that I'll be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a national delegate, voting national delegate for the Republican convention. So I won't be here, but I do look forward to learning more about this. And guess I didn't realize the timing when I signed up for that other job, but I just wanted to explain that. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
So Commissioner, you have something you'd like to add?
Just a matter of logistics, would you anticipate your being in Cody the night before and ready to go that morning? Just for logistics on our part as far as arranging. I think doing the site, and I'm just one of many, but I think doing the site first thing in the morning and then having that information moving into discussion would probably be best, but an anticipation of time when we should start the tour.
So I would prefer, committee, that we may start at 8 o'clock, or even if it's 7:30 works better or something like that. So absolutely, I think that the budget, we've got sufficient money to do another overnight in each one of those committees. So I would say just plan on that, committee. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, this will be a good test to see what the lodging availability is in Park. No, on a follow-up, with Senator Cole being absent as a former resident of Sweetwater County, I'll be happy to be his proxy vote. So.
We noted.
So, yeah, so I think just plan on that, and that would be for Campbell County, we plan on an 8 o'clock start. Something I think necessitates a little bit earlier than that. I don't know about the rest of the town. In the motel room all morning. So.
Don't get up so early.
Well, yeah, I can just adjust that in one day. All right, if there's no more business of the task force, we're adjourned. And we'll see you on the 15th. We'll get a schedule out to you from Park County as soon as we get that, and one from Campbell County for the 17th. So look forward to